Hello and welcome to www.luxurytolast.com. Today we're talking Explorer 2s. Now, the Explorer 2 is one of the all-time greats in the Rolex sports range. The Explorer 2, for some unknown reason, is facing a bit of a lull at the moment. And I've been a collector for 20 odd years, and I've always loved the Explorers, and I can't quite work it out because I can remember around 1999, year 2000, the Explorer was a very hot watch indeed, and suddenly the sub has taken the lead, that's around that time, around year 2000, the sub was slightly in front, and the GMT was the dog of the range. As soon as Rolex released the ceramic bezel version of the GMT, the previous version of the GMTs have shot to fame, and the Explorer 2 has really been in the doldrums, and I really can't work it out. The Explorer 1 is one of the all-time classic Rolex pieces, and I think it's really just shows you how stupid and fickle people are, because if they knew about the history of the Explorer 1, the Explorers would be way out there. And what I mean by that is the true James Bond watch, Ian Fleming himself, used to wear an Explorer 1, a 1016. The other thing is that with the Explorers themselves, they're just wonderful pieces. There's been a couple of Explorer 2s. You had the 1655, which came out in 1972. That was a plastic version of the Explorer 2, only available for black dial. Then in the 80s, when the Sapphire version came out, they had three different dial choices. You had white, cream, or black, and that came out as a 16550, and they then changed it to the 16570, and they're just an absolute fantastic piece to have there. The Explorer 2 is a 2 time zone watch, and it's got the bezel that's a fixed bezel, and personally I've always preferred an Explorer 2 over over a GMT any day of the week there. The Explorer 2 itself there, I've had a couple. I've had many magnificent watches. I've had 18 karat gold Torno Cartier. I've had Day-Date President Rolex. But when I look back on my collection and say, what pieces have I really loved? My first Rolex was a 1016 in the 90s, and then I got an Explorer 2 white dial one around about 1998, 99, and I really loved it, and that was a really fantastic piece there. I also, a couple years later, had a black version dial of it, and I must say I really think the white dial version, called the Polar, is probably the nicer of the two. But I mean, look, what's my opinion worth? The black dial ones apparently are slightly more expensive, but I think they're both lovely, beautiful watches to have there. The Explorer 2 is wonderful because it's got the 2 time zones, and it's got the fixed bezel, so you're not dicking around with the bezel itself there, and the bezel is metal, so it's got a very distinct look to it. I think the Explorer 2 in white complements if you've got a Submariner in steel. It's a great piece to complement it there. So that's the Rolex Explorer 2. The Rolex Explorer 1 itself there is a lot simpler. It's basically just a watch with no date and no second time zone. So it's a simpler version. It's sort of a much simpler than the no date sub, which simply is a Submariner without the date feature, because it still has the turning bezel. The Explorers themselves, they've got a great Rolex history, and I think they're really great pieces, and the amazing thing is they're both, the Explorer 1 and the Explorer 2 are both really good value for money on the secondary market, and I think if you're looking for a great sports Rolex, you couldn't do better than an Explorer 2 or an Explorer 1 for that matter. The Explorer 1 has been superseded now by a slightly larger one, and I must say I do like the standard Explorer 1 at the 36mm case, but I can understand the fashion for bigger watches, and I still think the Explorer 1 is excellent buying because of the fact that it's got that bit of prejudice against the size of the case. The Explorer 2, however, is a big chunky watch, and it's certainly not going to change there, and I think it's one of the most beautiful sports watches that has ever been made by Rolex, and I think they're going to have an increase in popularity, so there you have it, Rolex Explorer 2, great buy, and I hope you've enjoyed this clip here. Please don't forget to come to my free information website, www.luxurytolast.com. Free information, free product reviews, heaps of videos on watch collecting, diamonds, any expensive sort of thing, you name it, it's there. Thanks very much and have a great day, and don't forget to subscribe to my videos. Thank you.